Welcome to WBN 001. Welcome back to my dinner table. Today is going to be the candidate review for the candidates seeking the Republican nomination for the offices of Governor and the office of Attorney General. Before I go into the candidate reviews, I want to touch base on a couple of issues. One, a lot of candidates participated in the interview process. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, those interviews will not be posted on this channel for you to view. There's just not enough time before the convention to get those up. On a side note of that is the interview with David Kirkham. I know that this was one of the most requested interviews to have posted. I contacted Mr. Kirkham, arranged an interview, and conducted it. Unfortunately, I need to have accountability on my side and accept the responsibility for the audio. It was unusable. That was my mistake. It was a great interview. Unfortunately, without the audio, it's nothing I can put on the internet. I did contact his campaign and let them know that the audio was unusable. They, beyond any campaign, made every attempt possible to communicate with me and coordinate a second interview. I'm a very busy individual. He is extremely busy also, and we just were not able to schedule that second interview. But that was not for lack of their desire and communication for that interview to occur. The problem was on my side. Had I have gotten the audio correct, that interview would have been posted. So I apologize for that and just move on. First candidate that getting a review is Morgan Philpott. In 2004, Morgan Philpott was accepted into law school. He, upon completion, moved back to Utah and got back into politics. He is kind of considered a young gun in politics. Before law school and after, he's very active in the political arena and has done a lot. The name, a lot of people know, and the reason why is in the prior election against Jim Matheson, he came closer than any other candidate to defeating Jim Matheson. This is because he has an amazing grassroots campaign. This, if he was to receive the nomination, would definitively be out there. So his ability to have a grassroots campaign that's successful is a great strength of his. Final thing with Mr. Philpott is he is a very keen observer on what is currently going on within the government, what the issues are, who's involved, and so forth. So that, I believe, was the third real quality that Mr. Philpott had. Moving on to the next candidate, William Skokas. Mr. Skokas is an oil man, and a reason I believe that this is a great quality of his is anybody who's gone on and pursued their education probably understands that being taught theory is not the same as reality. Theory and reality are two different things oftentimes. So for an individual to have a working knowledge of what it is to do business in an industry versus the theory that's taught of doing business in that industry are two separate things. As an oil man, he knows this, he understands this, and particularly in the area of the natural resources, this is valuable. I do not know of any other candidate that has the working knowledge aside from Dr. Kenneth Gray in the area of the natural resources, specifically for him, oil. The second quality that I believe he has is he's an author. He wrote a book called Return to Common Sense. This book is available on Amazon.com. Why this is a great quality, I believe, is a lot of us talk about something. A lot complain about something. A lot desire to do something, but to actually put pen to paper, that's a whole different thing. Anybody who has written or knows somebody who has written a book, it is an entirely different thing to have it go from pen and paper to print. So to actually have an individual that is so passionate about something that they put pen to paper, they see it go to print, this says that they truly are going to pursue what it is they're talking about. The third thing, and I think this is probably the most valuable thing with Mr. Skokas, and unfortunately I did not see this at the forefront with a lot of candidates, and that is charitable work. I know as an individual, I truly strive to do more charitable work in my personal life, and it's very difficult. Great intentions, but at the end of the day, it's very hard to make that time to go out and do charitable work. Mr. Skokas not only does this, but this is a part of who he is. And so for somebody to consistently make this a part of their life speaks volumes about the type of man that he is. And I think that this is an amazingly strong point when looking at an individual as to how they're going to be when they make such an issue a priority in their life. Moving on to the next individual, Mr. Lane Ronau. Mr. Ronau served in various roles in both the private sector and the government sector, and these roles are administrative. So he has a wide range of experience in an administrative role in both private and government. Some of the government sectors that he's had an administrative role is the director of the Salt Lake City Building and Zoning Enforcement Department, as well as several others, and one of those was the Justice Court Judge for Salt Lake County. Second thing that I think is a great strength for Mr. Ronau is his media background. A lot of people understand that the media, to a large degree, dictates what becomes an issue, what is diffused as an issue. And I'm sure for people watching this, you can understand there have been things on the news that you've seen and thought, how is that the news of the day? Why is that getting 24-hour coverage? And at the same time, you probably know of things that you've thought, why is this not getting coverage? This is huge. This is a big issue and it's not getting coverage. So for an individual to have a background in that, his background is a reporter, an anchor, a producer for several different stations and networks. This means he understands the media side of things. He knows probably who to talk to. He definitely knows what route to go to make it an issue, to maybe even defuse an issue, because public sentiment is very big when it comes to something being addressed. So to have that media background is a great quality to have that no other candidate had. Third issue that is a great strength for Mr. Ronau is probably one of the most commonly discussed but was never actually addressed by other candidates, and that is the DABC. This is the Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control. Now this was an issue that had two parts to it. One is this is a state department, a state-run department that generates, I believe, over 300 million every year. Essentially, the state controls the sale of liquor. They control the distribution, who's going to be able to sell it, when it's going to be sold, sometimes at what price, the rules, the regulations, all of those things. Where this comes into controversy is in two parts. One, this particular department has recently and in the past been plagued with scandals. Some say corruption, some say misuse of funds, of authority, all sorts of different things. And how that was handled, a lot of people wanted answers that were never achieved. They were never put out. The second part that came into play with the DABC was that this is a state-run organization that, if you read the Merriam-Webster's definition for socialism, walks the line. It is so close because of how involved the state is that it's scary. And the argument was that this is a moneymaker for the state and they have a grip on it and they're not willing to release that grip at all. If this grip is on a product that is not of Utah, it would, the argument was that it would be more likely for a product not of Utah to have less grip and a product of Utah to have a tighter grip by our state government. If that's the case, looking forward towards our natural resources and taking into account how the DABC currently is, what does that mean the future holds for those natural resources, especially taking into account how fine of a line is being walked in regards to the literal definition of socialism. So big strength on Mr. Ronau. He was the only candidate to actually address this issue without even being asked. I think that was huge because it shows that he sees something occurring and the ripple effect that it has, because it will affect other areas. The next candidate is Ken Sumption. Mr. Sumption is, I believe, almost the epitome of the fiscal conservative. Now, a lot of the candidates use the term fiscal conservative, social conservative, almost to the point that you just shudder when you hear it, because it's just something that's said because it's the cool thing to say. Mr. Sumption, he was the epitome of this way before it was the popular thing to say. And this is through his record. So I think this is one of his biggest qualities, is he was in this position long before it was the position to be in. Second thing with Mr. Sumption is he really brought to light some of the issues within the state that no other candidate touched. They all wanted to go and say the problem is on the federal government side, not here in the state, but the federal government side, and that they're going to address it. But many people know that within the state we have problems, and very few actually dove into that. Mr. Sumption did. He put out that 40% of the state's spending budget comes from federal funding, and that it's known that the current path we're on with the federal government means that 40% is going to go down. Maybe not to zero, but it will be reduced. That 40% won't be 40% anymore in the near future. So if we do not address that 40% now, it will be a huge problem later. And so for him to actually step forward and say, we have a problem within the state and we need to fix it, and it has to do with the state's spending and the state's programs, was a great quality and a strength, I think, of Mr. Sumption. The last thing is the government in relation to family values. He definitely is a proponent of families being strong families, and really kind of shows the correlation of what's going on with the government in relation to families. So I think that his position on that was a very strong point of his. Great candidate, I think. Next candidate we're going to talk about is David Kirkham. First strength I think that is with Mr. Kirkham has to do with a bill that was HB 477. For people that don't know what that bill is, it essentially took a lot of information such as texting between an elected official and maybe a special interest group or a lobbyist, or video conferencing or emails, things like that, that's where deals are made. A lot of times deals are made at the last minute right there, and texting's going on, and all sorts of things are happening. And the bill was an attempt to make all of that information restricted to the public. The public would not have access to it. And that was a huge issue. Something to point out on that issue is that for anybody that attended the caucus, you'll remember at the beginning reading about being a Republican, what it means, and how you just filled up with pride and enthusiasm of this is right, this is it. Not one member of the Utah Senate voted against that bill. Not one. Only one Democrat voted for it, and every other Democrat voted against it. This is massively disheartening. In reading at the caucus what it means to be a Republican, and then seeing something like this come forward and knowing that every Republican in the state Senate voted for it, was disheartening. That being said, the strength that Mr. Kirkham has in this is that he was not an elected official, and yet he was at the forefront of leading the outcry against this bill to the point that it was overturned. So a citizen, a person who disagreed with what was going on, took it and went with it, and it equaled a overturn of that. So that did not happen. And I think that the credit that needs to go to Mr. Kirkham for this is huge. We have a responsibility to know what our public officials are doing, and the laws that they're presenting and the things that they're doing, and to have something that actually would prohibit that was amazingly wrong in my opinion, and that's a great strength of his, I believe, for being at the head of that charge. The second thing that I believe is a strength for Mr. Kirkham is, this is just an observation of mine, that he talks about how his business literally started in his parents' house. I can't remember if it's the basement or the garage, but it started in his parents' house, literally out of a toolbox. So what this means is that this is a person who understands that to get to where you desire isn't going to happen overnight. The idea of instant gratification is a bad idea. You have to take steps to achieve a goal. And that if you take each step and you see that goal, you see yourself getting closer to the goal. And when you reach the goal, the pride and the sense of achievement that you are able to put out to everybody involved is a well-deserved and a great quality to have. And he has this with his personal business. To take that path and to see it grow and to see it be successful, even under hard conditions. If you've listened to him, there's been times where checks were cut for employees, but not for him. So to stay on that path and achieve, that's a great quality. The third quality, strength that I think for Mr. Kirkham is, and this I think is the strongest one for him, is that I don't think he ever, in speaking with him, there was nothing that ever was, I wanted to be governor. If anything, it was, I have a successful business, I have a good marriage, I have a great life. The sum of me is not if I achieve this political office. So him not wanting to be that person, and yet as an individual participating in society, he spoke up on issues that were of concern to him. Soon he had a lot of people that were listening to him. And those people eventually got to the point that they said, you need to run. We're asking you to run. And it was because of that he took it up. And I think that is a massive strength for an individual, to not have the desire, but to be such an individual that is asked of them and that they accept it. So those are the three things with Mr. Kirkham. We'll go on to the final candidate, and that is the incumbent, Governor Gary Herbert. Governor Herbert, has a background in business that is fairly wide. If you watch the interview with him, he spoke of how in lean times in the 80s, he put together a daycare with the help of his wife and his family to get through those lean times. What I noticed in his experience in business is the areas that he has experience in have a commonality, and those are that if you are not trustworthy, if you are not doing things right, you don't get paid. If you have a daycare and you're mistreating a kid or not giving the kid the correct treatment, you don't have a customer. If you're in real estate and you're deceptive or you're dishonest, it doesn't take long before you get a reputation and you don't sell any homes. So his background in real estate development, land development, even the daycare, I think really does speak about how he has been involved in business areas that require an actual demonstration of the individual's core values. So another one is he's a big advocate of getting back our lands, of fighting for those, and the 10th Amendment issues. He talks, if you watch that interview, about coalitions that he's formed with other governors to work towards that and get those going. The last thing, and I think that it's one of the strongest points of Governor Herbert, and has probably been a reason that he has been the subject of controversy so much, is he is approachable. You can go to him and talk with him and discuss an issue, and he's going to listen. He may come out of that siding with you, but your opposition can also go to him and talk with him, and he will listen, and he might come out of that with a changed mind. To be open to hearing from people and be accessible means that as you find the direction that is yours, your truth, you're going to take in a lot. And I think that accessibility is both his greatest quality and probably something that's been held against him unfairly, in my opinion, in some areas. So I think those are the big qualities for Governor Herbert. Finally, the candidate review for the office of Attorney General. In this, there was a lot of discussion on how to present these two candidates. It's important to point out that in this race, there are only two candidates. Both candidates have very similar platforms. Both candidates are extremely qualified to hold the office. After a lot of discussion, it was decided that the key difference comes down to a basic concept. If you are of the opinion that you are happy with the direction that the Attorney General's office has taken, and that this you would like to see continue, then it's likely you would vote for John Swallow. John Swallow has the support of the current Attorney General, Mark Shurtleff. He has been Mr. Shurtleff's right-hand man, the Chief Deputy Attorney General. So the areas that the Attorney General's office has been working in, the changes that have been made, the issues that they've undertaken, if you're happy with those, he is likely the most candidate, because the candidate you would vote for, because that's where he's from. If, on the other hand, you were to look at the issues that the Attorney General's office has dealt with, or the policies that they've put into play, or how they've been handling themselves, and you are not happy with those, the most likely candidate would be Sean Reyes. Sean Reyes is not the right-hand man, is not likely to continue the path that the Attorney General's office is on. So really, there's not a lot that can be said about the strengths of either candidate, because they very much mirror each other. They're both attorneys, they both have experience, they both have a lot of similar values with family, with the lands, things like that. So really, we felt that it came down to if you're happy with the direction the Attorney General's office has been going in, the most likely candidate would be John Swallow. If you feel that there needs to be change in the Attorney General's office, then Sean Reyes. So that's going to conclude our review of those candidates. Again, want to point out, great candidates, great pool of candidates, and hope that you've enjoyed this. We're going to put up another video for the candidates for the Senate. Hope you watch it, and thanks for watching. Have a good day.